Ladies and gentlemen, on this Red Gaming Telecom video, let us discuss disc-based backwards compatibility on the PlayStation 4. Now, this is a rumor that's been circulating, and the basic premise is the PS1 and PS2 emulation can happen on the PS4 if it's disc-based. Now, this is started with Ashan Rasheed. Some of you guys might know him as Thuway, that's Thuway. He said, "Oh, and for those asking about any update concerning the PS2/PS1 emulation for the PS4, I don't know what Sony's plans are concerning disc playback. What I've heard is emulation experiences ranges from absolutely amazing 1080p to terribly buggy single FPS garbage. Sony doesn't want to ship half-baked product with people complaining about inaccurate features. Oh, and they are listening for your feedback. So please be vocal, and I'm legitimately telling you PS2 emulation is real. If you want local disc-based playback, make noise. With reputation by listening." And there's been a few others as well, including they've been pointing out that there's going to be improvements to the Blu-ray player of the PS4, although I'm not that fussed about that side of the news in this particular instance. So, how would this work? Well, local, of course, indicates that it's not going to be utilizing the Gaikai cloud, which we do know about, at least to a degree, how that's going to work, and I don't really feel that it's appropriate to discuss in this particular video. Instead, what about the local? Well, it's a rumor at the moment, and there is a lot of different speculations on exactly how it's going to work. Now, if we were to actually take a very brief look at, for example, the PS1's CPU, it's very easy to get a basic idea of how this is going to work. Even back in the days of when the PS1 was first released, the PC could easily run the games and completely and utterly emulate it, because the hardware wasn't that complicated. Now, please understand there's a difference between complicated hardware and powerful hardware. With the PS1, it wasn't actually that complicated in terms of the hardware design. It was actually pretty damn simple. The PS2, same thing. It took a while for them to be able to emulate all the functions. Particularly, I believe there were some issues with games that relied heavily on the SPUs. But regardless of the fact, the processor done pretty much what you'd expect. The processors aren't that powerful inside either the consoles, and they're not super multi-threaded anyway. I mean, for example, the PS1 was a single processor, and this is actually one of the reasons the Sega Saturn was actually harder to emulate on the PC, although of course we do have games that some emulators now that do work on the Sega Saturn, but certainly initially the emulators for the Saturn were crap compared to that of the PlayStation 1. Even though both machines were fairly similar in terms of overall specifications, the PlayStation 1's architecture was considerably easier to develop for. So what I'm basically saying is most likely the processor inside of the PlayStation 4, that would be the Jaguar, of course the AMD Jaguar, is more than sufficient to run the PS1 titles. Just fairly obviously. I don't remember all the specifications of the PS1, but I believe it was something like a, 33 MHz processor or something like that. For the PlayStation 2, it's a little bit more complicated. It's got the main CPU in there, but of course it's got a couple of co-processors, and I believe the main CPU is running at 299 MHz, let's say 300, and I believe the graphics clock is like 150. But of course, clock speeds aren't really relevant depending upon the architecture. Regardless of the fact, I could certainly see how it's going to be locally able to perform those calculations, but of course most of this is speculation on my part because it's not been confirmed how any of this is going to work, but it's fairly obvious it's going to be some type of emulator that they've set up, and that's how this is really functioning. It's worth noting, however, in terms of the resolution, well, he's not really being too clear exactly what it means. For example, with the PS1 games, I can see how they could easily be upscaled, but with the PS2, I don't really know how Sony are doing it. That's the bottom line. It could be heavily, just the way they've coded the emulator, it could be heavily utilizing the CPU, or it could just be the PS2's processor, graphics processor, doesn't transition itself too well with the PS4s. Of course, this is just pure supposition on my part. The other problem is you can't really just, well, upscale. It doesn't really work. Of course, there's going to have to be some texture filtering and stuff in there, so I guess it's going to have to be on a per-game basis. Regardless, I'm fairly happy with the news. Now, obviously, from the perspective of users who have not bought a system, let's go from that. So let's say you have not bought a PS4, you have not bought an Xbox One. I'm curious how many people are actually going to be like, yep, okay, I'm definitely going to be buying a PS4 because it has that backwards compatibility. I don't think too many people are going to be like that. I do, however, feel that a lot of people are going to think to themselves, hey, you know what, this is a cool bonus feature. And of course, the PlayStation 4 does have compatibility with PS1, PS2, but remember, theoretically, the Xbox One could have compatibility with the original Xbox. Which would be kind of cool as well. Remember, they are both x86 architectures. So I wouldn't be surprised if there could certainly be something to that. Anyway, as I said, this isn't a particular technical analysis or anything like that. I'm just kind of giving my thoughts on the subject. I'm going to be doing a bit of research when there is a little bit more to this rumor. Right now, as far as I can tell, it's not much more than speculation. Anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye for now.
Oh man, that smells good.